Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you again. You know, we're studying the book of Revelation, and we want it to be about the glory of Jesus. That's what we want to look into. But we're dealing also with a fallen spirit, the one is called Satan. He was actually created as a cherub whose job was to cover, to be a covering, to be a protection. So some people believe that he was the angel that was assigned for the protection of the throne of God, but also that he was an angel that was given the assignment of the protection of the earth. Now, you know, there's some debate over that, but that actually could be an explanation for why he was so jealous when Adam and Eve were made, that they were given the dominion of the earth. It's something that he wanted. So if we're thinking about Satan, we are, forced to think about what was his nature, what was his substance. Well, being an angel, we know that angels can take on different forms. The Bible actually teaches us to be careful how we treat a stranger, because a stranger could actually be an angel unawares, and that comes and appears as a human being. So we do know that they have intelligence, they have being, they have a sense of awareness, and we also realize that they can take on other shapes. But when it says in the book of Revelations that Satan will be bound, first off, helps us to understand that Satan is just not some ethereal smoke of evil that exists somewhere, but is actually a person that can be bound. But then also we realize that his nature is that of having a person, so that he's in a location and a body. And you say to yourself, though, well, then how can iron chains bind a spirit? But they aren't iron chains. It doesn't say that. But there are spiritual boundaries and spiritual chains that God can establish to limit the motion, the activity, and the progress of those beings called angels that he created. So let's look at the scriptures talking about how God can bind angels, so that we can understand that he can bind Satan, the chief angel that rebelled against God. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 18, "For Christ also suffered for sins once for all, the just for the unjust, so that he might bring us to God, having put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit, in which he also went and made proclamation to the spirits in prison, who once were disobedient when the patience of God kept waiting in the days of Noah during the construction of the ark, in which a few, that is 8 persons, were brought safely through the water." So here we find that the flood came, but there were angels who had fallen away from the Lord, that they were having relationships with the daughters of men. It created these beings, in Hebrew called Nephilim. They were half man, half fallen angel. They were irredeemable. Christ was only going to die for those who actually carried the humanity, that they were actually human beings. But God says that when Christ died on the cross, he went and preached in the prisons that held the rebellious spirits before the flood of Noah. So God, yes, they're spiritual beings, but God created a place for them to be held that they cannot escape from. Let's look at 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4. "If God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to pits of darkness held for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, with 7 others when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly, and he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah." So as we look at that passage right there, the Lord is letting us know that God had reserved pits of judgment for these angels, and that God is going to restrain them until they are judged. Did you know, as a follower of Christ, that the Apostle Paul taught us that we will judge angels? We will judge the angels that were part of the fall and the rebellion before the flood, by which God brought a judgment on the earth. Finally, Jude chapter 1, verse 6. "Angels who did not keep their own domain," in other words, the place where God said, this is where you rule, your domain, "but they abandoned their proper dwelling place. These he has kept in eternal restraints under darkness for the judgment of the great day. For as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them, since they, in the same way as these angels, indulged in sexual perversion and went after strange flesh, are exhibited as an example in undergoing the punishment of eternal fire." So there's the rebellion of the angels, a third of heaven that fell with Satan. They are loosed. The angels, though, who took it to the next level and had relationships with the daughters of men before the flood, they have been held in a prison, and they're going to be judged for the perversions that are on the earth, the perversions that men committed and that they committed. You say to yourself, why do I struggle against sin? Because the Lord is allowing in this season of our lives to know sin, to know exactly what it is, how to identify it, so that we are prepared to be judges when these angels are released. And so this is just an understanding for us that ultimately God will bind every spirit from Satan all the way down to the demonic that has ever rebelled against him since the very beginning.